Welcome everyone to our second edition of One Bowl of Rice interview. I'm Gus Arianto, the founder of One Bowl of Rice. Many of us will agree that following our passion can create impactful transformation to self and others, especially when our passion involves others, especially the community. At the same time, following our passion comes with its own up and down. Today, I'm proud to introduce Kari Baynes, a successful leader, an ex-executive of Newscorp, a professional swimmer, a mother who decided to follow her passion at the age of 50. Her story will be an inspiration to us all. Welcome, Kari. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Gus. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I can't wait to share your stories and your leadership insights to the world. Thank you so much for donating your time for my One Bowl of Rice. So why don't we start, Kari? Why don't we start this interview? Do you mind to share with us your short life story?
I've had quite a long life, but I will share I'll summarize it very briefly. So I'm born from a Danish mother and an Australian father, born in Australia, brought up in Australia in Sydney. Didn't go to university, went to TAFE and studied childcare, did public relations and childcare. When I was studying after childcare, I went to England. And when I started working with children over there, and then I took my first job in media. And then from there, I discovered the world of media sales, and I went on and returned back to Australia, took more jobs in sales and particularly media organisations. Eventually did a long stint of 16 years at Newscorp. And then when I finished up there, I decided to set up a swim school for adults. And that's what I'm doing now.
Wow, that's just, at the later of the interview, I really want to know how you move from sales executive leadership role to running a swimming school. I mean, there's a lot of people that doing your career, finishing up with high executive leaders, become a consultant, for example. But, this is a totally different journey. Can't wait to uncover your passion on that. But before we go there, I really want to come back to your journey when you went to UK. I remember you told me this story. You went to UK and tried to get your first job, and then you end up in sales. Is there any great moment or sacrifices that you can share with us, back to when you are started back then?
Yes. So when I went to England, when I'd studied childcare, England and the British system was viewed upon as one of the best childcare systems in the world. So I was hoping to learn a lot. So I went with huge ambition to become, one of the best childcare workers you could be. I'm going to gain so much knowledge and experience in England. And it wasn't quite as I thought it would be. And also it paid very poorly. So I could barely make ends meet on my salary as a childcare worker. Initially, when I went to the UK, I worked as a nanny, as many Australian girls do. And so you live in a very high life. And then suddenly, when you move into a childcare centre, which is where my ambition was, the money is nowhere near that, and the quality of life is not as you would think. And London's not a very forgiving city. If you don't have great, a reasonable income, it can be it's not a nice place to be poor. So a friend of mine suggested I go into a commission-only sales job in London, selling advertising space on annual publications. I didn't think I could do it, but she said, it's good fun, come along and do it. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try for two weeks. And then if I don't make any money, I'll just have to go back to childcare. So on my second day, I sold a full color, full page advertisement, which is quite rare. And it was all telephone sales. It was back in the 1980s. People smoke at your desk, all the, there was no training. There's the yellow pages, there's your script, get on the phone. And if you make no money, you don't get paid. And if you don't make any sales, you don't get paid. And if you make sales, you get paid. It's commission only. So I was quite shocked that I sold such a vast piece of advertising on my second day, as was everybody else. And so I ended up staying there and working with them, I think 18 months to 2 years. And suddenly I earned a lot of money and I had a lot of fun. It goes down as one of the most fun employment places that I worked. Yeah. And and it was a time in the 80s when salespeople were looked, marginally senior to street cleaners. No one liked salespeople. They were, the style of selling was very aggressive, and you used to slam people into a close. And I learned basically gutter sales there. And I actually have to say that it went on and served me very well for the rest of my life, because I can smell I can smell a sale at about 10 paces now. And I know when I've lost a sale at 10 paces. In terms of sacrifice, I didn't sacrifice anything except that my ambition for my childcare, because that's the sacrifice. I'd gone with these rose-colored glasses about how I was going to learn so much and become, a fantastic childcare worker, and I'm going to bring all my knowledge back to Australia and have a long career in childcare. And I sacrificed that because once I'd made that move into sales, I didn't intend to go back to childcare.
Yes. I guess the money and the success and the enjoyment dealing with people.
Yeah, the enjoyment of it. I think one of the things I struggled with childcare was the system was very hierarchical. It was based on seniority and length of service as to whether you got promoted. There's a lot of rigor around childcare, and obviously that was in the 80s. I mean, now it's even more so, as I understand. There's so many areas of concern with childcare workers, and the rulings and governance around it, looking after small children, is very rigid and tight, as it ought to be. But it makes it quite a stressful role. And when I worked in childcare in England in a childcare centre, I worked in a very poor part of London, and we had children there that were abused. We had children that came from very low socioeconomic groups. I remember one little girl that we had in my group, and she didn't know how to eat at a table because her mother used to feed her on the floor with the animals. So it was hard, and it was quite eye-opening for me, because I came from a middle-class background in Australia, that I hadn't been exposed to situations like that. And on that side of things, it was a very eye-opening experience. But on the other side of it, it wasn't a fun, and I was in my mid-20s. I wanted to have a bit of fun, and suddenly I went into this other environment where I think, you learned that you could have fun with clients, you could have fun with your co-workers, and it was just a laugh. Like, it was a lark, as they say in England. It was a lark of a job. I mean, the guys, I was the only person that didn't drink during the day, except on a Friday. Every lunchtime, the whole sales team would go to the local pub and down a couple of pints and then go back and work. Some people couldn't start selling till they'd had a couple of pints at lunchtime. So, it was a whole different ethos around work and how that is. And to me, it was like every day was like a party. Like, I look forward to going to work. And I think it actually taught me as a sales leader that the importance of having fun in the sales environment, because I think that when you have fun and you've got that energy, and the energy's up in a sales floor, you have a much better chance of making more sales and a much happier workforce.
And fast forward from there, you back to Australia, as you mentioned, and then you worked for 16 years at Newscorp, and then at the point where you are leading the organization, especially in the sales department. What's your thought from all your learning, the attributes and the characteristic of a great leader?
Okay, so I think a great leader, well, there's quite a few attributes. I think, first of all, you've got to be authentic. So you have to walk the talk. You can't repeat a message from, I work for one pillar of News Corp. There are many pillars in News Corp, and I was in the community newspaper space for a long period of my time, but I also worked in the national newspaper, the Australian, and other places. You really have to, as a leader, I think, be able to get behind the message, because sometimes leaders have to give difficult messages.
Yes.
And you have to get behind that yourself, and you have to be authentic with it, and you have to be able to communicate it well. You need to be compassionate when you communicate it, because not everyone is going to be pleased with what they hear. And so you don't, if your goal is to retain staff at the same time, or customers, and yet you've got to deliver what would be deemed bad news, then you need to know how to do it, and you need to know, you need to be able to be authentic with it yourself. And I think people see through people very quickly, and they know when they're on board with the message or they're not. So that would be one of the major attributes, I would say. I think the other attribute is I've never asked anyone to do a job that I wouldn't be prepared to do myself.
Oh, lovely. I like that point.
I would never ask someone to do so. And oftentimes, I mean, at one point I had a sales force of 350 people, and I would go down to the guys in the call center, and they'd be like, whoa, what's the big boss doing down here? And I'd pull up a phone next to them. I'd say, okay, come on, give me some people. I'll sit here with you and call. Just give me a list. I'll just pick a customer for me. Cold call. I love cold calling. Give me someone and I'll just call them, because I just think if you can also demonstrate that you're willing to do what they will do, you're willing to do their job with them.
Is this kind of skills attribute of what you mentioned, that of course close to you, comes automatically, or comes from your learning since throughout your journey? Is this something that you at one point in time you didn't even know that this is important, but you learn it and you see how impactful it can be, hence you demonstrate that?
I think it's a combination of nurture and nature, and that's, when we talk about children, if I revert back to childcare, how much of their skills are and their being is from the way they're created, and how much is the way they've been nurtured. And I think for me, I've always had a strong sense of justice, and I always tend to go for the underdog, and I'm always wanting to be inclusive. So I'm always looking out for people, making sure that everyone's kind of catered and involved and engaged. So I think on that sense, and I'm quite prepared to stand on my own. So there's a story that when I was in primary school, I went for a year with no friends because there were two factions in the class, and I didn't want to join either. So I went for a year with no friends, and my parents didn't know. My mother found out at parent-teacher night when the teacher told her, you realize she's had no friends all year because she didn't want to join either of the two groups. So I think there's an element that I've always been a little bit different. I have a lot of friends at the moment, so don't worry, Gus. But I think I am prepared to stand by what I believe, and if that means that I'm not popular. And as a leader, that's another attribute. You're not always going to be popular. In fact, it's very hard to be. It's quite a lonely role. You don't have a lot of friends in the organization. It is because sometimes you've got to do things that people don't like.
Yes.
It's not about being popular.
Yes. You have to have the right intent, the right vision, and you need to stick with it. Now I want to fast forward as well. So you are at Newscorp, you're living on the top of the mountain, you're doing what you love, you have 350 salespeople working with you. then you decide to follow your passion, swimming. Right? Why swimming? I mean, there's a lot of passion, isn't it? I mean, you are a great leader. You have a lot of. Why don't you, become a consultant? I don't know, but why swimming? Can you swim?
Okay, so I didn't. So I learned to swim. I could swim breaststroke, but I learned to swim freestyle at 48 years of age, and it was a skill that I'd always wanted to learn. My parents had sent me to swimming lessons. I went to private schools. I don't know what I did in swim carnivals, but I don't remember entering any races. I had always wanted to learn to swim, and a friend of mine and my sister and I went swimming at Clovelly Beach one day, and I saw them swimming so effortlessly freestyle. And it was one summer, and I just went, you know what, this is enough. I've got to learn to swim. I've got to find someone to teach me. And so I was fortunate enough to stumble across a guy that I used to work with in my local swimming pool. And I saw him teaching a man to swim. And so I asked John if he would teach me to swim. And he very kindly said he would. And every week I went and took lessons from him. And so I looked like a dog in a washing machine. I could barely swim 5 strokes. And I kept practicing every day. And I went and had lessons with him. And at the end of 18 months, I could end up 20 laps of the 50-meter Olympic pool doing freestyle, which I was very proud about. And during the course of that period of learning to swim, people would say to me in my workplace and in my social life, Kari, what are you doing? You look great. And I said, well, you know what? I'm learning to swim. And people go, I said, I'm a bit embarrassed to tell you this, but that's what I'm doing. And they, people say, you know what? Actually, I can't really swim. Where are you learning? And so I started backfilling my classes with John and getting other people for him to teach other people. And, I'd go away for a work trip or for a holiday, and I'd say, John, I'm not going to be here next week, but I've got my friend, she's going to jump in and take my class, So I ended up saying to him, John, I could sell you 10 times over. Like, why don't you let me do it? I've got all these people that I know, adults that want to learn to swim, and they don't know how to do it. And he was like, no, he wasn't particularly commercially minded around swimming. He felt it was a good community service, which is so lovely of him. And he's such an awesome teacher, but he just, he didn't want to do that. So as time marched on at Newscorp, swimming got into my blood, and I'm a competitive soul. And so I joined a master's club because I wanted to compete. And then I started going to training at night, and then my swimming ramped up. I was swimming 8 times a week. I was doing 3 or 4 nights of training or days, over the course of the week. And then I'd be filling it in the other days with me, and sometimes swimming twice a day, obviously with 8 times a week. So it became my food, for my soul. I fell in love with it. And I remember my PA trying to set meetings up with me, and I'd say, oh no, I can't go to that meeting because I've got training on, and I can't do that because I'm going to a competition carnival, a swim carnival on the weekend. And I remember her saying to me once, Kari, you've got a job here. Like, you can't build everything around your swimming. Like, at that point I was head of business development. You're head of business development here at Newscorp. You can't run your calendar like that. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I calmed down. And, but it just was indicative to me about how important it was to me. And I started using a lot of analogies, because a lot of things that swimming teaches you that resonates throughout other aspects of your life. So I would go to meetings and talk to people about the glide, and that, how you need to hold the water, and that in fact in swimming, doing less is best. And so, which is contrary often to sales, because in sales you talk about make the calls, every call will lead to the next, I used to follow Tom Hopkins years ago, the guru, sales guru in the 80s, you know, every no leads to yes, you know, all that sort of hype and about activity breeds sales, you know. And so I came out of a corporate world like that. And then suddenly I'm being told, no, less strokes, hold the water, still, be still, glide, body position. I was like, and I was thinking to myself, you know, this is a metaphor for other aspects of life. You know, you need to hold the water, you need to glide, you need to take a moment, you need to pause, you need to reset, you know. And I started introducing that in work. I remember my boss wrote on one Christmas card, Kari, thank you for all your help in teaching me about the glide.
Which is true, right? Which is true.
It's
Which
true.
is absolutely true when you put it that way. The fact that we're living in the world where, you know, the people making a judgment of others by the things they do, you know, not yet the things they do could actually destroy a lot of things if it's not carefully managed. So glide, I love that.
Yeah. So, and I think, you know, as you enter a whole new world, often when you join a sporting discipline, whether it's cycling or running or whatever, you end up meeting new people. And so the swimming community is a very supportive community. You know, the local pools here in Sydney, and I'm sure they're the same everywhere. In fact, they are, because I often swim in a pool in London, are like the local well of the olden days. You know, the community, the local community meet there, the local community shares stories. They support each other through the good times and the poor times. And often that, you know, 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, just before the pool opens in the dark at 6 a.m. is when firm friendships are formed over mornings after morning after morning. And, you know, joyful experiences are shared, you know, burdens are lifted, you know, sadness is shared. And often with a variety of walks of life, you know, people come from very different aspects of our society, but they all have a shared passion of swimming, and then they become firm friends. And as a result, my friendship group has grown enormously from the people I've met in swimming, who come from all sorts, you know, from doctors to teachers to car drivers to, you know, everywhere. Just, it's quite fascinating.
And how the switch then from swimming as your passion to swimming become your business, from Newscorp executive learning how to swim, become a competitive swim, and we haven't even shared to the world that you swim professionally in the open water, in the open seas. But how this transition happen, and what do you say to yourself? I will stop from Newscorp, I want to open my swim school, and then you suddenly become a small business. I remember you mentioned to me at one point, you actually forgot that you are actually opening a new business with no one, that you can't ask anyone to make anything, that you literally have to do it yourself. Can you share with us around that?
That's right. So when my time came to a close at Newscorp, before I left, I said to people, I said to my boss there, you know, that's it. I'm done with the corporate world. I'm going to set up a swim school for adults. And she said to me at the time, oh yes, look, I'm going to come and join your swim school. I need some help. And you know, when you're leaving a big organization like Newscorp after so many years in a senior role, and you're saying to people as you're going out the door, I'm actually going to open a swim school, people look at you like you have a couple of heads, like, are you crazy? Like, and
I think we are too now. Kari, I think a lot of people in the corporate world will feel the same. Like, I mean, it's a totally different, and it's not like you are in the corporate world doing a just okay job. You are the head of business development for a mega company. I mean, that's I think people today will see it that way too.
Yeah, it's true. And I remember when after I left, I went and had some outplacement support, and I sat there with the outplacement consultant, and she made some suggestions about me getting onto boards, and she sort of was working with me to identify roles that were available at that time and what I should go after, and helping me to discern what's the next best path. And by this point, I had sort of waned a bit on my idea of a swim school, because I was like, what was I thinking? That's now, crazy. And one of my friends said to me, I said to her, do you think that people will think less of me if I don't do it? Because I've been spruiking it so much. And she said, oh no, Kari, no one actually thinks you're going to do it. So it'll be fine.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh, thank goodness. Okay, I'm saved. And so I spent 2 hours with this outplacement consultant. And at the end of going through all the it was one of our initial meetings, through all the sort of opportunities that I could or couldn't go for and what I should be looking at, she said, now, is there anything else? And I said, I've had this crazy idea, but I've parked it, but I'll just share it with you anyway. And I said, I've had this crazy idea of setting up a swim school for adults. Look, I know it's crazy. I'm not going to do it. And she was like, that's a brilliant idea. And as it transpired, she had been a competitive swimmer herself. Her son was a competitive swimmer, and she had contacts in the aquatics industry. And she spent the next hour sitting with me, helping me draft up the whole plan for the business. And she thought it was excellent. And she put me in contact with some people that she knew personally. And that was it. I was just like, I am going to do this. Wow. Okay. So I did go and do my Australian Company Directors course because I thought it's worth having. And, there may be a time when I want to get onto a board, and that would be, it's a very useful course to do, I might add. It was one of the best courses I've ever done. So I was very happy to do it, but I was, kind of hedging my bets. What if the swim school doesn't work out? I can always, then I've got this qualification that will enhance my experience and other qualifications I have that I can go back into the corporate world if I have to, a bit of a parachute, in case all else fails. But yes, you're right. I started it, and I remember my partner saying to me, and what are you going to do, Kari? I was like, I'm going to be the manager. I went off and did my teacher training, and he said, but you've got nothing to manage. You don't have a business. And it was so hard to move after so many years of working for companies and being in the corporate world. And I remember doing up a business plan, and it seemed to take me forever because I had nothing really concrete to do. Like you can put some framework, but there's no meat in it. It's just bones. And in the end, I just started. I got an instructor on board. We took one lane in a local pool, and I begged my friends to come and let me, use them as bodies to learn to swim, and for us to draw attention at the pool so people can see that we're teaching adults to swim. And I put a lot of money into some marketing, which my accountant slapped my wrist and told me I don't have a Newscorp budget because I wasn't used to. I was so used to seeing zeros on everything. It was very hard to make that move to small business operator. It's quite. I had no HR department. I had no IT. There was no one I could call. I was so used to like ringing. Oh, get IT up here, and they'll help fix the computer, or ring HR and they'll do up an employment contract for me. I had to learn it all. And
it's unbelievable. And we're talking about all this happen when you are 30 years old. Right?
Not quite 30 years old.
All this happened when
not
you're
quite 30
old,
years
right?
old.
Like you are at the top. Like the things that fascinating. And I want to go deep about your swimming school and what you do with the community. But the things that I keep learning from the way you share your story, you must be a very driven person, because you went to other countries, you make it happen, you stay in one business, you go to the top, you open your school, swim school, starting with no one to manage by yourself, even though in your head you have a lot of people to manage, even though there's no one, and now you have multiple swimming schools. You must be a very driven person by nature.
I am, and I had a vision. So my vision was that I wanted every adult in Australia to be able to swim. Everyone over 18 should be able to swim. That was my vision. It was a big, hairy, audacious goal that I'd set myself. And I think that if you have a goal like that and a vision that that gives you like something to hold on to, because setting up, doing a startup, a small business in an unknown industry, which I was a new girl on the block, I didn't come with the pedigree of ex-Olympic swimmer. I came with the pedigree of, I've just learned to swim myself only a few years ago. It was all us about, if you like. I think it was, people, the guys on the pool deck that were, competitors or peers in the same industry used to look down at me, and I was just like, oh, who is she? Now we get on very well, but at the time, it was like you had to earn your stripes, and there I was, a little startup, and I think they all thought, oh, she's not going to last, and what's going to happen there. But I was very passionate too, that I wanted my clients to have the best. So I really wanted them to feel the respect and the best, because I had one experience when I was learning to swim where John encouraged me to join his children's class one afternoon, and I was in a class with a bunch of 12-year-olds, and it was the most embarrassing experience, and they could all swim better than me. And I mean, Gus, you haven't met me in person, but I'm 6 foot tall. So I'm not a wilting violet. I can't pretend I look 12, I'm standing like a maypole in the middle of the pool, these kids around me. And I felt very conspicuous, and I don't ever want my clients to feel that. I want my clients to feel respect and care, and I want them to have the best, because I know as an adult, learning a new skill at an older and mature age of life is very hard. But my gosh, it is so liberating, because you're doing things that you never thought you could do. I never thought I could swim 50 meters. I never thought I could swim a kilometer. I would never have thought I was going to swim in the ocean. I mean, I'm scared of sharks and I've got a phobia around surf. I never thought I would do either of those things. And yet, in 2019, I swam 14 kilometers down the Thames in a race. And I went and swam 10 kilometers in a race around in Fiji on Manor Island. I've been up to the Lake Argyle, swim 3 times, and in a team swam 10 kilometers in that race. So in that event. So with crocodiles, 30,000 freshwater crocs in the water there. So, I was never that girl. I wasn't sporty. I was, art galleries and hardworking, and, just sport wasn't part of my life. And so for me, it was a whole new world. And I think being able to feel your physicality, and then to learn a new skill, and to feel this mature woman can swim that, that is quite empowering. And I think
incredible.
And I think for a lot of people, and men and women, but I'm going to point out women particularly, once you're over 50 in the corporate world, your lifespan there becomes short. I mean, let's be honest. Yes. I think women over 50 in the workforce, in senior roles in corporate Australia, are few and far between. And as you get older, they become less and less. And so when you see women that are coming to you over 50 and they're wanting to learn to swim, and then they manage to accomplish it, seeing someone swim their first 50 meters at the end of the pool, and that look in their eyes, and like, I did it. Oh my gosh, I did it. Like, I did it. When you go to the ocean races and you're there in the marshalling area pre-COVID, when we could all marshal together, you'd be in events, I'd be in waves of these races, and they go in waves off the beaches with women, lots of women, and they'd all be nervous, and they'd be there, and they'd be, oh, I've never done this before. I'm so excited. And then they come out the other side, at the end of the event, they're coming out the water, and they're like, I did it. Oh my gosh, I did it. Like, it's so empowering.
That's just, I have my mind listening to you. There is 2 things still going through my mind, and I don't know which one go first, but I will not finish this interview until I go to the depth of this. Number one, your story about when you compete in the lake, in the open lake.
Oh yes, the first 10K race in England,
the first 10 kilometers race, professional race. And you told me the story where during that swim, after the first lap, A lot of things going through your mind. I can't do this. This is stupid. You know, you are hungry, you are cold, you are unprepared, even though at the end you finish that. Do you want to share it with us? Because whilst every story that you mentioned so far sounds driven, success, I'm sure it's not like that. I'm sure there's a lot of tears, a lot of doubts, a lot of pain through your passion itself. You know, everyone have passion, but the pain that it carries, share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll first of all touch on that swim, and then I'm going to give you another example as well. So I had thought that, and I coach people, I teach people to swim, and I know that you've got to train, and you've got to train well for an event. But of course, my passion for my business, I have to say, a lot of the time overrides many other things that I would do for myself. So I had registered for this race in England, in Lake Windermere, which is in Northern England in the Lakes District. It's cold. It would be there. The race, I think, was in July or August, in their summertime anyway. And it was a year when they'd had the beast from the east, where that cold wind had come through. And so there was talk, because the ice was coming off the mountains, it wasn't melting, and the water temperature was probably not going to be safe. So there was a chance that the race may have been cancelled. So knowing that in the back of my mind, and having so many other commitments around my business and trying to get that, you know, off the ground, and, you know, well, it was off the ground, but to try and kind of grow it and make it bigger, and all the work that's involved in that, I didn't focus as I should have on my training. And then as the time grew closer, I started to panic, because I went, wow, this is your first 10K race, Kari, and you haven't really prepared for it. I had done a 5K race before, but I hadn't done 10. And then I kind of tried to jolly myself along. How hard can it be? Just keep swimming. You know, that was my kind of rationale. And I hadn't done the necessary preparation either around feeding. So when you're doing a big long event like 10 kilometers, you need to have a feeding plan. You need to have a hydration plan. I hadn't done any of that. So I think I was probably, truthfully, in the back of my mind thinking it's going to get cancelled. Anyway, so there I go. I rock up, and I have my swim buddy's in England, and she was the one that suggested this would be a good event for me, and she was right. But so I remember talking to her the sort of week before, and she's saying, oh, Kari, it's touch and go, it might be cancelled. I remember in my mind going, oh, please cancel it. I just don't think I'm ready. And as it grew closer and closer to the time, I started to really panic. And the thing about training for anything is you can't crash it. You can't, with your body, you can't just fit it all in. You know, in the corporate world, if I had something to do on deadline, if I had to work around the clock and get it done, I would. And I have done. I've worked till 4 a.m. on numerous occasions doing stuff. But you can't do that with your body, right? Because you need rest periods, you need tapering off, there's a whole plan around building up to a swim like that and coming down, which takes weeks. So you can't just do it on deadline. So anyway, there's a photograph of me in the marshalling area. So the swim goes ahead, right? We're all in wetsuits because there's a risk of hypothermia, except for the hardy Scots who come down from the glacial mountains of the Highlands of Scotland. They're allowed to swim without one. Anyway, and of course, the other thing is my friend pipes up to the people, the organisers, that I'm from Australia. Well, then I was the first Australian. So then they interview me in the marshalling area for everybody to hear. Here's Kari, the Australian. And they interview me, and I'm like, please don't do this, because I might drag, like, I don't know if I'm, in my mind, I'm going, I don't know if I'm going to make this. Anyway, there's a photograph of me, and you can see the blood just drained from my face, you know, as they're marshalling and you're getting ready, they're going to let the gun off and you're going to go. And I can't believe I'm doing this. Anyway, it was 6 laps of a circuit in this lake. And there was a feeding station at the end. And so we all start out, we do the first lap, and I panic and this is this is a lesson here, because you should only ever worry about your own race and not anybody else's. And I learned that lesson. Stick in your lane, worry about your race, don't worry about what's going on around you. So I immediately panicked. And because I'd been interviewed, and so everybody knew me, I felt this pressure. And of course, coming from Australia, you know, in England, people think all Australians are magnificent swimmers. You know, you feel this kind of pressure. And I saw these guys overtaking me and lapping me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm probably at the end. And I didn't want to be at the end, because there's also a cutoff time. And if you don't finish the race, they pull you out of the water and you don't finish, because they can't stay out there forever. Yeah. So I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna finish this race. And so I panicked and I didn't stop for feeding. And I just went, oh, forget that, Kari, just keep going. So I went to the second circuit and I started to feel very, very cold. I started to lose feeling in my feet. I started to panic my breathing. I started to sort of hyperventilate a bit. And I just went, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do this. And I'm on the second lap. I've got 4 more to go. And I just remember calming myself down, calming my breathing, focusing on my stroke, and just talking myself through it and just going, you can do this. Just calm down and slow down. Don't go too hard and just come around. And then I stopped and fed. I just thought, if you're last, you're last. Doesn't matter. I stopped at the feeding station and I had a little bit to eat. You know, you have these little small portions and a little bit to drink. And then I went off again and I felt much better. And I realized at that point the importance of feeding. And then I managed to finish the event. It was a hard slog, and I came out, and then the last one, maybe a little bit over 1 lap, my arms were aching. They were so sore, so sore. And in fact, when I came out, I was in tears. I came out and I was in tears. I was just, the emotion of thinking, I can't finish this, to then bringing yourself around, to then pushing through, to then your body starting to give up on you, your shoulders starting to kill you, like the pain excruciating, to then finishing and walking out of the water. I was so emotional. And then I couldn't lift both my arms for a day. And then I couldn't lift I think it was my right arm. I couldn't lift for 3 days. I couldn't brush my hair. I couldn't lift it for 3 days. And then I panicked that I had done some real damage. And, you know, it was because all of this was because I didn't take time for myself. I didn't make the effort to think about what I was going into. And I didn't follow the directions of physios and others that I could have. And I have a lot of people on my team that would have given me the appropriate advice and directions on what I should have been doing. But I was so immersed in my business, I didn't give myself the time.
But Kari, do you agree that even in that concept, in whatever we do, the lack of preparation, the lack of skills as well, and also a lot of people, you know, it's funny when we hear your story, and I'm sure people choose what they want to hear. You know, I always say to people, you know, you look at successful people, successful journey, we tend to hear just the success. We don't take notice that you are hungry, you are crying, you have a pain in your shoulder. But the reality is, it's a balance, right? Like every success comes with that. Like it not just happen like that. Doesn't matter.
No, it does. And I learned my lesson. So when I was training for my 14K Thames swim event in 2019, which was, I think it was the following year, I got a coach. One of my coaches coached me all the way through it, and she made a training plan for me, and I followed that plan to a T. And I did some dry land work in gym, you know, PT work. I did, I got chiropractic treatments and you know, treatments on my body treatments. So I made sure that I was really, really, really well prepared. And in fact, you know, I would try on the way over to England. We stayed over in Singapore for a few days, and I was there swimming 5 or 7 Ks in a hotel swimming pool. I start off in the dark in the morning, and by the time I came out, like everyone had breakfast and they were still, like I'd just be still swimming like a goldfish in this tiny little pool going around, but just to keep the training up, even though I was tapering off. But I did everything to the book, and as a result, I swam the 14 Ks, I sprinted the last 200 meters, and I could have kept swimming, and I came out of the water and I could just move my arms. I was fine. I was totally fine.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. Now, Kari, back to your swim school, right?
Yeah.
You told me the story, not the story, this is happening right now, that, I mean, it's a swim school. So it's a business for you. There's 100 swim school across Australia, 1,000 million swim school across the world. But you told me also that part of your goal is to help immigrants, so they can learn to swim. In particular, women from Muslim country that come to Australia, that unfortunately or fortunately, and to the audience, I'm sorry whether I call it fortunately or unfortunately, that the limitation of cultural differences, they're not openly able to swim in the open public swimming school. You prepare your swim school to cater for these women. Share with us why. I mean, let me put my commercial hat on. Why you tend to take difficult journey? I mean, like if you want to open a swim school, just open a swim school. You are a great salespeople. I mean, get 100 men's and women's out there from Sydney and Melbourne and just let them to swim. You make money and that's it. It's easy. You want to compete. Why do you compete in the open sea? Why don't you just compete in the swimming pool? I mean, it's you tend to take to the next level. And now you said, all right, I have a swimming school. I want to help immigrants. They can't speak English properly. They have a cultural differences. You must have a lot of time in your hand. Like, I mean, it's to add complexity to your business. Can you share with me what's the inner passion that help you doing extra for others, and why?
I think it's because I want to help people. Well, a few things. Learning to swim is a skill for life. And in Australia, with all our waterways and coastal cities and the amount of pools, swimming is synonymous with becoming Australian. Yeah. So a lot of our clients who are, new Australians, 80% or more are new Australians, see swimming as synonymous with becoming Australian. They also they want to be able to access swimming. They also want, their kids are learning to swim often at school, so they feel like they can't save them. So that's why. But why do I do it? I think I just want to help people, and I want them to find the same pleasure in it that I do, or hope they don't all do, by the way. Not everyone feels the passion that I feel for swimming, but I feel like I think it's a responsibility of people in this country to help new people settle in to this and become part of our society and our community.
But surely there will be it comes with challenges. I mean, it's originally I came from Indonesia, so that part of cultural differences is quite common to me. But in Australia, for you to actually close off a swimming arena because no one can look in, and and you share with me you witness the happiness that comes through from these women when they can swim together. I mean,
I think so that was a swimming carnival we did with Master Swimming New South Wales, and that was the first women's only swimming carnival. So it was an inaugural event, and we absolutely covered the outdoor pool, all the walls, so no one could look through, no chink, no anywhere. And our swimmers, the women that I work with, were able to strip off their modesty suits and swim in their swimming costumes. And the freedom they felt was amazing. The joy on their faces, the elation, and the fact that they could swim faster. And then we ran some races and they just loved it. I think also it's that I'm very curious. So I like to learn. So I learn as much from my swimmers as my swimmers learn from me, you know, and I'm always learning. And I think you can learn from everybody. And I'm always learning. I learn a lot about other communities. I learn about other cultures. I learn also just about how bodies respond in the water. You know, there's certain body types and certain ethnicities that are much heavier in the water. They've just got a more dense bone structure, so it's harder to get them to float. So so you are learning a lot, and there's a lot of challenges teaching swimming because there are some people who really cannot float. Now they can ultimately, but we can help them. But a lot of people struggle with floating, particularly if they've got a lot of muscle mass or they come from the subcontinent, often struggle with floating, from Africa, struggle with floating. So, you know, how do we work with that? So I love that challenge. Like, how can I help this person? How can I get this person to float and experience what that feels like? I think too, I love to learn from people. So I talk to my clients a lot whilst they're learning to swim, and that also helps to relax them.
And what do you learn from them in this particular group? For
this particular group, I learn a lot about the different festivals. I learn a lot about the cultural mores. I learn a lot about the family dynamics at home. I learn a lot about the kind of work that they're able to do once they get here to Australia. For some of them, I learn about, you know, also some not great things. You know, we've had Syrian refugees, you know, you're hearing not such good stories. But I learn a lot about how they're making their life here in Australia. And that's very fascinating. Yeah. It's very, very fascinating. And, you know, a lot of the women that I've worked with, you know, they want to feed me all the time. So they want, you know, well, they see me going to the vending machine between classes to get a snack. It's like, Kari, what are you doing? You should have told me you're hungry. I bring you food. It's like, it's okay. So I learn a lot, just little snippets, philosophies. You know, they share. I don't know. I'm not Muslim. Some people they share. You know, some people share some of the sort of sayings from the Quran, you know, like little things. A lot of my swimmers pray before each class, you know, before each drill. I said to them, please don't pray. You're not going to drown. Every time, now I'm just going to do this, and I go, this. No, please, you're going to be fine. I also love it when I put the classes together sometimes where they're a mix in the class. And I've got some lovely photographs of women that come from different backgrounds all in the one class. And they're all getting on like, you know, firm friends, like they've known each other for years. And I love that, you know, and I think that's the epitome of Australia. That's what we are. And that's what I want to encourage, I guess, more than anything.
And that's, you know, even listening to this story, and you know, the world are full of differences. You know, even for me, you know, I left Indonesia in 1990, so that's almost 30 years ago. And being Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world. Even for my eye, you know, now 30 years I live in Australia, to imagine someone closing a swimming pool, so, you know, a very cultural difference, women can swim, and you embrace it, you learn with them, you eat with them, you talk to them, and then you passionately help them. It must be true, you know, you hate what you don't know. When you actually put an effort to know someone, the world is a beautiful place.
That's right. And so I've done something similar with a group of Muslim men that are wanting to swim as well. And that was a little more challenging because they weren't comfortable having a female instructor. So I had to get a male instructor for them initially. But in the end, they weren't happy with some of the instructors I got. So in the end, I ended up having to teach them. So I would be at the pool with, from covered, with my legs covered and my upper body in the hot sun, Gus, the sun beating down in summer in Sydney, in Western Sydney, teaching them. But I think they respect it. I mean, I couldn't touch them, so I couldn't go in the water. I'm not allowed to touch them. But I think they respected me, and I think it was good for them to see that in Australia, it's okay, women do this, and I can teach you. I'm a woman and I can teach you just as well, or even, better at times than a man. I'm no different, and I have the same abilities to do that. And I think in a way, just going through that exercise helped to break down some barriers for them in terms of how they had seen, because they lived in pretty close community. And some of them, some of the people I was teaching were sheikhs and amans, and, they're quite cloistered, and so to see that there's me and you know what, I'm not interested in anything else but imparting my swimming to you. I don't want to marry you. I just want to teach you how to swim. That's all I'm about. And I want to make sure your water's safe. And I want you to have a bit of fun with it. So that, because I actually think people learn a lot better when they have a bit of humor. They're more relaxed. And
absolutely. I believe
you have to be relaxed to swim. You can't fight the water. So if you fight the water and you're not relaxed, you're not going to have success. So you have to help people relax, and humor is a good way of doing it.
Fantastic. Now, Kari, in the ideal world, this is probably my last questions as well. Mm-hmm. If everything come your way, you are a good person, your story is lovely, you help a lot of people through your passion. If everything ideal for you, if there's no money, not object, everything, energy never runs out. How do you describe Kari 10 years from now? What is Kari? What are you doing 10 years from now? And what do you think you can do to make more a difference more?
Okay, so I'll probably be writing my second book. I'm writing my first book now. I will probably maybe even more than second, but I won't be that ambitious. It's taken me a while to write the first. Kari from now will be looking at a global plan. So I hope that I'll be in a position where I'll be able to go broaden the horizon into other places, other countries where people would benefit from learning to swim, where there's cultures where swimming's not part of the normal behavior of that society. So bringing swimming to them. So that's what I would see. So I'd see it on a global basis as opposed to state or nationals. That's what I would hope in 10 years.
Wow, that's just fantastic, Kari. Fantastic. You know what I learned throughout the last 1 hour? You are someone who chase your dream, whether, and you are also someone that actually happy to change your dream. You passionate enough to go to London, UK, to do childcare, but then you realize that you want to pursue other things. You are a proud person that, grow your career through sales and end up in a very, very successful business, Newscorp, and then you learn to swim, and then you take it to the next level, where it's not only learning to swim, you actually open your own business, eating a lot of humble pie, because I can't forget what you say, you manage no one. You manage no one. You manage no one. You manage yourself. The water. Right? Yeah. You still make a lot of phone calls to find the students, and then you broaden that through your passion of self by professionally compete until today. I can imagine swimming. I love swimming too, and I know how hard swimming 2 kilometers. So swimming 14 kilometers in the open water where there is shark, crocodiles, you name it. You know, I hope I'm not saying it wrong here. I mean, you're not 30 years old either, you know, swimming.
No. I turned 60 a couple of weeks ago.
That's
so,
it. You look 30, by the way. So
thank you. But I think too, I was going to say to you that you asked me before about the hard parts when we talked about that 10K swim. And I think just want to touch on running a small business that's built on a labor, you know, of passion and a labor, and built by a labor of love, has its down moments. You know, it's not all a bed of roses, and there are many tears and many sleepless nights, as much as there are many elated moments. It's a lot of hard work, you know, 7 days a week often, and it has its moments. But, you know, the thing that keeps me going, Gus, is to talk to a client, to see someone that has made progress. That's what inspires me. That's what keeps me going. My clients keep me going. The support and the feedback I get from my clients is what keeps me going, actually.
Wow, that's just, you know, it's hard to disagree with that. I mean, because like what I said, surely there is an easier way, but you choose not to. I mean, even opening a swim school, now I ask an open question, what do you want to do 10 years from now? You still driven enough to say, I want to bring this in the global stage where you can influence people that is not blessed enough to be able to enjoy swimming through cultural differences, through different regulation in their countries, and you still want to push through. And when I hear your story about your passion in helping, you know, women's in Australia, immigrants in particular, I'm an immigrant myself, and you put a lot of effort into that. That's just outstanding. And this is when I call you are a one bowl of rice leader, because you connect people, you elevate people to be better than yesterday, and you bring colors through your effort and through your story, so the people around you can enjoy their life. Thank you so much for your time, Kari, donating your time to share your story. I hope the audience enjoyed this meaningful story of you. I did. And thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much, Gus. It's been a total pleasure, and I feel very honored to be part of One Bowl of Rice.
Thank you, Kari. Have a great day.
Thank you.